Hello and welcome back to this last part of the tutorial, which for this part I'm going to show you how to join the different rays together with false plaits and then with a false plait with a bead on it. I've worked 2 rays of the rainbow. I wouldn't recommend this because, as you can see, the pairs get in the way. But just for demonstration purposes, I've done both of them so I can show you both of the plaits to do. I've already done one false plait here. Normally plaits are usually used in Bruges lace, and they're made by a series of half stitches. So you would do 2 half stitches, tension up, 2 half stitches, tension up until they reach the point that you needed them. That's fine if you're just going in one direction, but with this one I wanted to go down to this point, join it in and then come back to carry on, because this false plait's actually made with my worker, and I'll show you how to do that, and it's very easy. So here's my worker here, and I'm just got the last pair to go through, so I'm doing my cross stitch and twist, and I'm just going to tension up a little bit. I'm going to move the other pairs out of the way. Now I've got 1 twist on this worker pair here, and I'm going to add 3 more, so it's got a total of 4, and then just tension it up, and you'll see this is always a guessing game when you do your first one as to how many you put on, but you don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose. So what I'm going to do is make a sew-in into this pinhole here, as that's where my line's going. Before I do that, let me just put my pin in, because this will help when you're tensioning things up. So I've put 4 twists on, put my pin in, and now I'm going to sew in on the opposite side. So I'm using my Lazy Susan. Let me just grab a pin, pull my loop. Now I can take my Lazy Susan out of the pinhole. Somewhere in here I've got a loop. Here we are. So I'm going to lengthen off 1 bobbin and put that through the loop of my Lazy Susan and pull it through. Just going to use my Lazy Susan to make that loop a bit bigger. And then I'm going to put my other bobbin down that loop and hold on to it, pull it tighter until it's in. Now I will put my pin back in, so in order to put my pin back in I pull my pairs over to the left, and there we are. Now to tension up all of these twists, if you just pull your bobbins to the right, can you see how it's tensioned and spread those twists evenly along there? Now if I was to just twist this back 4 times and then carry on, what you would end up with is 2 rows of thread, and then we want a single row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 twists on, and then I'm going to sew this pair around this bar that I've already made. And this is a really easy sewing to do. So you're just going to put your Lazy Susan under, catch the thread, there we are, to make a loop. So all it is just you're sewing around that bar. So Lazy Susan or a crochet hook underneath that bar, hopefully you can see, and pull that thread through. And I'm now going to put the other bobbin that I didn't make this loop with through that loop. That's it. Carefully guide everything down. Now this time what you're going to do is you're going to hold the bobbins to the left to tension it up. And can you see you now have one single line of thread that looks like it's been plaited. And I'm now going to put another twist on, and it can carry on back into the work. There we go. Just remember though, because we're doing a half stitch, the other bobbin from the pair, you'll have one pair which will be your worker and the other bobbin, and it's in the 4th position from the right. So if this bunches up and you need to tension it and pull it down, it will be the 4th bobbin from the right. There we are. And cross stitch and twist and pin up. Left my pins on the wrong side of the pillow, sorry. And you can carry on. And you can see you've got a neat line, a neat false plait that joins one segment to the next segment. So this is the 4th bobbin from the right, and I'm just giving that a pull because you want to make sure that all the threads are laid across the first twists rather than bunched up. So I'm hoping that will make sense. I will be saving the videos, so you can go back and see that again. Now when we put the bead on, that's going to be slightly different. Let me just pop those down. Right, so this time I've taken my worker, let's pull those in. This one's my worker here. I've taken it through and I've cross stitched that last pair. I'm only going to twist the passive pair for the minute. And what I'm going to do with the worker pair is take off that thread from the bobbin, because I want to have the threads running all the way through the centre of my bead. I've got my bead here. Now I'm not putting any twists on this pair for the minute, because twists complicate things and they add extra thread where you don't need it for a minute. You will be putting twists on, but they will come later. So I'm putting my bead on my Lazy Susan, pulling a loop, and I'm going to put both of these threads through that loop and pull them all the way down. So pull the ends out of the loop. Now you have to be careful that you don't lose the ends off of your Lazy Susan when you do this. Okay, so I've got both the threads through my loop. I'm then going to pull the bead off my Lazy Susan, and I'm going to, so my bead has come off my Lazy Susan and onto my ends, and this time I'm going to pull the ends of my threads all the way through. Now you want to make sure that you these threads twist when they go through the bead, so by making sure that you have no twists on that pair at the moment, can you see I've got no twists. I'm in control with how many twists I can now put on, so I need 4 because that seems to work quite well with these lengths. So I'm going to put 4 twists on. 1, 2, 3, 4. The problem with putting twists on before you put the bead on is that these threads have a habit of twisting on their own. So by not worrying about the threads until you've got the bead on, you can have better control over how many twists you've got on. So now I'm going to remove the pin and do my sewing as I did before. So push it through the pinhole, pull it back slightly to create a loop, catch your Lazy Susan thread and put one thread through that loop. I haven't put my bobbins back on yet because on the way back I need to put these threads back through the bead. So everything's all a little bit long, so you just have to have a little bit of patience pulling things through. Here we go. And it all gets tangled. Right, let's see if that's, not sure if that's going to work. Okay, so we have our Lazy Susan thread, and I'm hoping I haven't lost my two ends because I definitely only have one here. There's the other one. That's okay. Now what you have to remember with this thread is you don't want the thread to go all the way through the hole. You're just creating a loop. So I'm just going to pull on my Lazy Susan so I have a loop, and I'm now going to take out my Lazy Susan thread. There we are. There's my loop, and I'm now going to put the other really long thread through that loop. Pull the loop down. There we are, and it will tension up. So again, I'm going to pull the threads to the left to get the pin back in. It's always a good idea to put the pins back in when you're dealing with this sort of thing from sew-ins, because I'm now going to pull the threads over to the right to tension up those twists. I'm going to push the pin down, and I now need, if I didn't sew these threads back through, what would happen is that you would have this little ring. But I want to take my threads through my bead. So I'm going to put my Lazy Susan through. I'm going to try and do it this direction. I have to do it from this direction, but obviously I'm trying to do it so that my fingers aren't in the way of the camera. I knew there was something I was going to do. I was going to change my orange Lazy Susan thread out, so it matches the orange of that ray. Okay, so I've come from the left through the eye of the bead. I haven't put any twists on this thread because I'm going to do that in a minute once it's gone through the eye of the bead. I'm going to put all my threads through that Lazy Susan loop. Hold on to the two ends of my Lazy Susan and avoiding any pins. I'm going to pull the thread. Let me see if, no, it's caught around a pin. Bear with me a minute. Okay, there we go. Now, you might find you have to pull quite tight, quite hard, because you are trying to pull two threads through a hole which has already got two threads in, but I've managed to pull a little loop. So I've taken my Lazy Susan thread out and I'm now pulling the whole loop and pulling all of the threads through. So once these threads are through the bead, you'll be glad to know you can put your threads back on your bobbins. So I am going to just do that, just because it makes this final sewing a little bit easier. So So I've come from I've put my Lazy Susan through the bead from the left to the right, made the loop and pulled the threads through. And as you can see, that bead is now sitting on a single row of threads, and there's no threads interfering down the side. Nearly there. Now I could just put 2 twists on and carry back on into the work, but before I do that, I found it seems to be a bit neater, and it sits a bit better if you actually make this a bead on a false plait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 twists on this pair, and now it's gone through the bead, I'm going to just sew it around the thread. So I'm catching the thread, same as you do for a false plait, putting the other bobbin through, and then tensioning everything up. There we are. It just seems to finish off this false plait neater than if you just carried on. You would end up with quite a bigger gap. You will find that you will have a little bit of a gap. If you wanted to, if you don't like that, you could go round the first bar a second time. So I'm just going to put a twist on that, go back into my cloth stitch and twist. Now I pulled the threads to the right, and it removed a little lump that was there. So it's all about controlling and pulling your threads in the right direction, which you will find out. You definitely don't want to, if you've done your plait and you're heading off to the left, you don't want to start. Can you see how if I pull them this direction, it moves everything up the plait? So you want to pull in the direction that you're going after you've made your plait, and it then slides everything back in. So cross stitch and twist, half stitch, cross stitch and twist, and pin up. And remember that the pair that makes your false plait is 4 from the left. Sorry, 4 from the right. I was doing so well with my lefts and rights. And you'll see that once this tensions up, it sits a lot better. So that's how you pop your false plaits on. So you now have all the instructions to finish all of your rays, and then you will, if you've seen my previous videos, you will know how to stiffen it. I would just add, once you've done each ray, I would stretch the threads off in one direction. Can you see this is where I've sewn in, and underneath here is the trail, so I've pulled all the threads in that direction, so that they learn that that's where they're going to be sitting. So when you come to stiffen it, you'll lift them up and you'll get your paintbrush around, but they will already be laying in that direction. So once you've stiffened it, hairdryer it, and then you can take all the pins out and hang it up. Hoping that you've enjoyed making your rainbows, and I hope to see a few of them. Do share, because it's always a joy to see other people's work. Thank you. Take care.